For sure, for sure. So, couple things. One, I want to welcome you, and I'd love to just start and hear a little bit about your background as a
Sure.
owner of a practice and also an extensive career as a martial artist.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. As an attorney, I've been practicing since 2007. I went to Pepperdine Law School up in Malibu. I went to Cal State Long Beach for undergrad. So Cal State
Nice.
School guy right here.
Yeah.
Um, I was the right combination of smart and poor. So I got a scholarship. I got a full scholarship to Pepperdine Law School. So I went there, got my degree from there. Was on the law review over at Pepperdine. Law Review is kind of like, it's an organization you could join. You got to kind of like try out to get on, and they teach you how to research and write and everything. And that's kind of like everyone that's in law school is trying to get on their school's law review. So it's kind of competitive to get on there. It's something good to put on the resume. And then after I graduated in 2007, this kind of ties into my martial arts background. I was training in MMA, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, all that stuff, and kind of figured out I didn't necessarily want to practice straight out of law school. And one of the people I was training with at the time, training me, was Rob McCullough. And Rob, one day we were running, was like, hey, when you finish law school, you could always just like look over my contracts. Like, I've got contracts that need review. All the fighters around here need contracts that need to be reviewed. And I was like, that is a great idea. I'm going to give that a shot. So I partnered up with someone who was already doing that in the area, and he had some clients, and then we teamed up for like 4 years. Had a great time managing fighters and traveling to a bunch of UFCs, training as much as I wanted. So I was training like 5 hours a day. I was training a lot at that time. And then around 2009, my wife was getting ready to have our first kid, so I figured I'd better do something with all this training. So I did like a little amateur fight just to kind of get it out of my system. Then I had my first daughter, and then I had my second daughter, and then I decided I needed to start making some money because that job wasn't really paying the bills. It was cool. My wife was really supportive and like, chase your dreams. So then after our second kid, she's like, when are these dreams going to start paying off? I was like, I could always just get a normal job at a law firm. Plus I was traveling a lot, man. Like, honestly, at that point, after 4 years of being on the road every weekend and flying to Vegas twice a month and flying all over the country for the fights, I was like burned out. I had 2 little kids at home. I was missing stuff like their first steps and their first day of school. And I was like, I need a job that's just where I can just be here, or I can be more present. So I joined a law firm in my area, normal law firm situation. I had practiced at a firm before that, so I basically came in as like mailroom level junior associate, get me coffee, like really starting from scratch, even though I technically had my bar card for almost 5 years at that point. But whatever, you got to pay your dues. So I worked there for about 5 years and kind of clawed my way to the top and ended up making partner in 5 years. They actually hadn't had partners before that, but they created a partnership for me and for this one other lawyer. So then we created a kind of a 3-way partnership, and I did that for 2 years. And then I kind of realized that, this is like, what do they say about what do you get when you win a pie contest? More pie. And that's kind of
Right.
like I was working myself to death, 12-hour days, trying to be like, all right, when I make partner, it's all going to be worth it. Then I'll be able to catch my breath. And then I made partner, and they were like, yeah, so everything you're doing now, you still got to do, but we also want you to travel and land clients on the weekends. I'm like, well, now I'm back where I started. I'm back to traveling on the weekends. I'm back to never being home. And, it wasn't a fun area of practice. I didn't like doing it. I didn't feel like I was helping people. We worked with like a lot of banks and loan servicing, and it was just, didn't really make me feel good about myself. So at the end of 2017, like start of 2018, I had some clients at that firm that kind of were wanting to leave, and I was wanting to leave. So I was like, well, I did the math, and I was like, well, if I just had these 3 clients and they were just paying me instead of paying the firm, I would be making about the same amount of money and working half as much. So,
Nice.
sayonara, guys. So I left, started my own firm in 2018, and that freed up time to let me get back into jiu-jitsu, which has been great, and just been jiu-jitsu and my solo practice basically ever since.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to go back, rewind a little bit. 2007, MMA scene is on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Southern California. I mean,
Yes,
it is a hotbed.
Huntington Beach. It's like
Oh yeah,
one of the
hundreds of
meccas.
people.
It's one of the meccas. Well, let me do the MMA or the martial arts side of the story, because they all
Please,
kind of
please.
they coalesce. So
Absolutely.
like lifelong martial arts nerd. I've been doing martial arts since I was a kid, watching kung fu movies, fighting with my brothers, that whole thing.
Nice.
In high school, got into wrestling. I wrestled for 3 years in high school. I was a pretty good wrestler. I was better than most, but definitely not the best. Um, my biggest drawback in high school was I didn't have like the discipline. I didn't know how you need to train and how hard you need to work to really be successful. And my home life was not a stable home life. That's a whole other podcast. But my home life was not a stable home life. So I just didn't have like kind of the support system that you need to really be a high level high school athlete. But I did good enough. I made varsity my freshman year. I went to CIF. I got hurt junior year in league finals, so I couldn't even go to CIF. And then I kind of figured out at that point, like as soon as I'm able to graduate, I need to get out of this situation. So I didn't wrestle my senior year because I needed to get a job, start saving some money, because I had to self-fund my college education and pay for an apartment and, support myself.
Sure.
So my senior year, I didn't wrestle. I just kind of like focused on college and saved money and got out of there after I graduated high school. But I still wanted to compete, and I was used to eating whatever I wanted because I was wrestling all the time. So I started getting kind of fat after I graduated. I was like, man, I got to do something. And one of my brothers had a friend who ran a karate studio. So he's like, oh, you should go hit up Brian and do karate. I was like, yeah, sounds fun. So I went and did that. I did that for 5 years and did like competitive point karate, kind of like the Karate Kid.
Sure.
And got my black belt in that. That was super fun. But I also got my first introduction to jiu-jitsu through karate, because my karate instructor, and this is like 2001, 2002-ish, early MMA days, my karate instructor was taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because he was just a martial artist. He just loved martial arts. And he was like a blue belt. He used to say, hey, Nate, you used to wrestle, right? He's like, all the black belts after karate practice, we're going to pull out the mat and we're going to glove up and we're just going to like do UFC. We're just going to beat each other up. He's like, you want to stay after and do it? I was like, absolutely. That sounds amazing. So I was the only one that knew how to wrestle in the whole group. So I was just double legging everybody and getting on top of them and just punching them. And no one had an answer for it until I went with my instructor, who was the blue belt. And like I would double leg him, and then he would put me in his guard, and what is this? And then he would strangle me or armbar me, and I was like, wow, I want to learn to do that. He's like, hey, that's jujitsu. I was like, I want to learn to do jujitsu. So then I went and just Google searched the nearest jiu-jitsu school near me, and HB Ultimate came up.
Wow.
And that was like one of the very first MMA schools in Orange County. Tiki and Rampage and Tito and Razor and all those guys were all training there and just getting after it. It was a tiny gym, but there wasn't like these massive, MMA gyms back then. Everything was kind of, just a hole in the wall, but they were training hard and I liked it. And I was like, I want to get in with these guys. I want to get beat up by these guys. So I did that. Yeah. Pretty intensely. Like I said, I was training like 5 hours a day. I was doing like 2 hours in the morning, and I go back in the evening and do like 3 hours of like jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and wrestling and stuff. And got to go and train with a lot of pro fighters and even jump in on some training camps and see what that pressure cooker, was like, and get beat up by those guys and mixed up with some really, big name guys. I'm nobody, but this guy was on the Ultimate Fighter. This guy just fought in Pride. This guy, there was people coming through there all the time at that point, because that was the spot in Huntington. Right. Like if you were in Huntington and you were a professional MMA fighter at that point, that's where you went, like 2005, 2006. They were all cycling through there. So I did that. I trained primarily without the gi for that whole time period, the first like 6 years. And around the time that I did kind of my amateur fight, which is like 2009, 2010, Junior Perez, who was Walter Perez, who was my jiu-jitsu coach, was like, if you ever want the black belt, you need to put the gi on. I don't wear the gi, man. I really just want to wrestle and choke people. And he's like, oh, you'll really like it. It's more technical. I was like, fine. So I put the gi on, and then it was a real quick belting process after that, because I'd already been doing jiu-jitsu for 6 years and I'd wrestled for 3 years. So I was like, I got my blue belt like really quick, and then I got my purple belt really quick after that. And then I switched careers from the MMA management over to the normal law firm. And also around that time, I hurt my neck really bad. It was like a re-injury from high school football, which is, bad for your neck oftentimes. Right. And that combined with the new hours I was working at this new job, trying to pay my dues as a, entry-level associate. I was working like 12-hour days. I was just like, well, I can't really do jiu-jitsu. My physical therapist said to not do it anyways. I'm just going to do some kickboxing, focus on kickboxing. So I just kickboxed for like 5 years or so. But right around the time when I left my firm, started my own firm, was when UFC Gym in Huntington Beach opened up, and the bigger one, and they had a 6 a.m. jiu-jitsu class. And I was like, well, that fits into my schedule perfect. I'll do it before the kids get up. And then I jumped back into it at that point and kind of didn't look back until COVID happened. Kind of derailed.
Sure.
Derailed a lot of things. I got my brown belt in 2019, December of 2019, and then COVID shutdown happened February of 2020. So I was a brown belt for like 3 months, and then it was like no more jiu-jitsu for anybody. And me and all my buddies were like, oh, what are we going to do? This is terrible. So we were doing like, we call it speakeasy jiu-jitsu. Like we would sneak off to each other's gyms, or we'd find a gym that was open, and we just get our training in best we can. I got COVID that way the first time, just sneaking off to do jiu-jitsu with my buddies, of course. And then COVID for me wasn't a happy experience. I had a pretty bad case, and that kind of knocked me down a peg. But then when everything opened back up, in like 2001, April of 2001, I think everything kind of opened back up. The 6 a.m. class that I had been attending wasn't on the schedule. So I went to Jamie Fletcher, who's the head jiu-jitsu coach over there. I was like, Jamie, what's up, man? Are they bringing back 6 a.m.? Because that's like the only time I can train. I got kids and a job. And he was like, well, we need a coach. Do you want to coach it? And I was like, dude, if it gets the class back, I will coach the hell out of that class. And he's like, cool, you got the job. So I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. I mean, there's a ton to unpack there. So just so I understand, from a timeline perspective, you found HB Ultimate during your law degree? Oh, no, you finished your law degree.
Right as I was starting law school, right between undergrad and law school, I got my black belt in karate, and it was like, it took like 4.5 years. So it was like the end of 2004. Right when I graduated undergrad, I got my black belt, and that summer I had a lot of transitions. I like bought a house and stuff. And that was part of the reason. If you wondered why a guy who lives in Huntington Beach went to school in Malibu during law school and to drive that 50, however far that was, it was like a 3-hour drive some days, because I had just bought a house in Huntington Beach, and then I got accepted into Pepperdine, and they gave me a full scholarship. So I was like, well, I don't want to sell my house, but I can't really turn down a full ride to law school. So I just did the commute. I just commuted for 3 years. It was brutal, man. It was brutal. It was brutal on my nerves. It was brutal on my car. It was brutal on my relationship with my wife.
Sure.
The first year was the worst. I used to get up at like 4:30 to beat all the traffic to get out there, and then I'd sleep in my car in the parking lot. So I was the first one to class every day. I never missed a class. My teachers used to give everyone else crap, because you see these kids that live on campus walking across the street in their pajamas, 15 minutes late for class.
Right.
Like, Nate lives in Huntington Beach. He's been here for 2 hours. You guys live across the street. You can't be here outside. I went back to talk at the school 10 years after I graduated. My professor was like, I still talk about you, how you used to drive from Huntington Beach every day. Anytime I have a kid who's late, I tell him your story. I was like, good. Take no slack. Those punk-ass kids. Get those punk-ass law students in there. So I started. So that summer, I switched from karate to HB Ultimate. It was like 2004, 2005, right around there. And then started that whole process.
So let me ask you a question. Where does all this drive come from?
I don't know, man. Like, growing up poor helps. My mom used to have a saying, because we used to always tell her, like, what a good cook she was. My mom was a good cook, but we were like a coupon family. Like, my mom would have to clip coupons to keep us fed. And she used to say, well, hunger's the best sauce. Because we're just hungry. So everything tastes better when you're hungry, and it's the same thing about success in life. Like, I've been poor. I don't want to be poor, So that really motivated me to work hard to get myself out of that situation. But then at my law firm, when I made partner and I was working myself to death, I kind of got to the other end of the spectrum where I was like, well, now I'm working so much, I'm working so hard that all the benefits that I wanted of, that come along with the wealth that I'm accruing, I can't enjoy, because I'm always at work. I'm never with my family. I can't take vacations. I think when I started at my firm, I didn't take a vacation for almost 3 years, like nothing. And I was working 7 days a week. Sunday was like a half day. That was my day off. I worked a half day on Sundays. But I worked full days, 5 days a week. I worked like six or 7 hours on a Saturday, and Sunday I'd work like 3 or 4 hours, and that was it. It was like no break, And I was a genius when they hired me because they were like, they didn't really want to hire me because they wanted someone who was licensed in Arizona. And I was just desperate to get my foot in the door anywhere. So I was like, yeah, no worries. I'll take the Arizona bar. And they're like, well, we also need someone who's going to be able to do this job. And this is like a full-time gig. I was, no problem. I'll study for the Arizona bar and I'll work this full-time gig. No big deal. How hard could it be? It was pretty hard.
I bet.
It was pretty hard. But that was like the first year, my first year at the firm. So I was just burning the candle on both ends. I was working, 10, 11, 12 hours, coming home, studying for 2 hours. I literally, because my wife had just had our second baby, and we had a downstairs office with a futon. I literally just slept in the office. I didn't even sleep up there because the baby would wake me up, and I was only sleeping like 5 hours, 6 hours tops anyway. So I just roll up from the futon, hop on the computer, study for an hour, go to the office, work 12 hours, come home, study 2 more hours, go back to bed, rinse and repeat day after day. But I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew once I got the bar, I could stop doing that piece at least, and that kind of took some of the pressure off. But I still had the rest of the work to do and stuff. And then at a certain point, you got to keep stuff in balance. And I just felt like my life was very much out of balance. I wasn't doing the things I like to do, jiu-jitsu and training. I wasn't spending time with the kids. And then I thought about, like, when the kids are grown, sure, we're providing this great lifestyle for them, but if I'm never here, what are they going to say? If someone asks them, would you rather your dad was a millionaire, or would you rather that your dad was there for your games and your school plays? And
Yeah.
I think most kids would say, I'd wish he was there, man. I don't need my dad to be a millionaire. I remember the moment I decided to leave my firm. My second oldest daughter was getting an award at school, and great kid, just hadn't had really any awards up to that point. So, and it was going to be a big surprise. So it was kind of a big thing for the family. And it was at I was at work every day at like 7, but I wanted to come in late that day to go to my kid's award. And the partners were like, nah, man, we got this call with this client. They specifically requested you got to be there. And I was like, look, dude, this is really important to my kid. This is really important to me. And they were like, if you go, we're just not going to be okay with it. And you're going to have to really think about your career here and blah, 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 blah. So I was like, fine. So I went to the meeting instead of my kids thing, which I regret doing. But the client no-showed for the meeting. And I remember thinking in my head, can we cuss on this thing? I remember thinking, F this. I'm out of here. I'm going to start making arrangements. At that point, I started making arrangements. I set up my own PLC. I set up my own bank account. I set up my own website and everything. It didn't go live, but I was making my plan to exit at that point because it was just, I realized all the stuff I would continue to miss. And they had no remorse about it. It wasn't a sorry, man. We know that was important to you. It was kind of like, yeah, clients do that sometimes. Okay.
Wow, that's frustrating.
Okay. Yeah, very frustrating.
So is that one of the things that drives you now with so you now, I guess, kind of working through the early stages of opening your practice, you're finding an exit, you're working through that path. Is that one of the things that drives you now, is having that balance? I mean, one of the things I admire about what you're doing is you're not just training, you're teaching jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You're, on top of your practice, that thing's thriving. On top of that, you're spending time with the family. I mean, just being able to see all those things. I mean, that's the, textbook of any jiu-jitsu practitioner that would want to, be successful or chasing some levels of success in life. It's kind of real clear balance of all that. Is that what drives you? Just kind of some of the challenges that you've had in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. And, having been poor, having the poor experience, having the experience of working yourself to death, not having my dad around. My dad wasn't around for a big chunk when I was a kid because he was a guest of the state. We'll say he was a prisoner. He was in jail. So he was gone for a while. Yeah. So, I know what it's like when your dad's not there and what that feels like. I know what it's like to be poor. I know now what it's like to work myself to death and the toll it takes on you mentally. And at the end of the day, you don't get an award. The guy that gets buried with the most money doesn't win, right? What matters when you die? What matters is the relationships and what your memories and the memories that you leave behind. You can't take those with you either, right? So, like, what kind of memories am I building for my kids? What kind of childhood am I giving my kids? Once you get to a certain level of monetary success in this country, you've got enough. Me and my wife sat down when I decided to leave the firm. And I was like, look, I know like if I stayed there, I could make more money, but do we need more money, right? We can afford the mortgage. We have college accounts for the kids. We've got cars. We live in a nice neighborhood. They're in good schools. Like, what would that more money? The time I'm trading for that money away from you and the kids and the family. What is that really for, right? I don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be a billionaire. The kids are healthy. They're doing well. We're thriving, and we could honestly get by on a lot less if we just like, we're a little smarter with our expenses. So we buckled down and we made a budget plan, and I got rid of my car and I got a cheaper car, and we moved to like a cheaper house. But at the end of the day, it all ended up netting out anyways. But I was prepared for a big pay cut. I was prepared to go back to eating top ramen. I was prepared to make that sacrifice to get the lifestyle that I wanted. But it ended up, thankfully, my practice did okay, and clients came with me and stuff, and I did a good job for them. So they gave me word of mouth, which is the best referrals. But I was ready. I was ready for a significant downgrade in my income, and maybe it'll still happen. I'm not trying to think that you're never safe when you're running your own business.
Sure.
You're always one bad month away from things going off the rails. So you got to stay on top of it and hustle, keep those new clients coming in and stuff.
For sure. So law, right, or your legal practice is the vehicle you use for your business. Where does where did the whole interest in law, passion in law, philosophy, right?
Yeah.
You're a philosophy undergrad.
Correct. With a pre-law emphasis.
Yeah, pre-law emphasis.
Yeah.
Full ride to Pepperdine. You go take the bar in California and Arizona. I mean, there's a lot there, and that doesn't happen on accident. So where does that passion come
my
from?
interest in the law, not to overshare, but my interest in the law started when I was a kid because my dad went to jail.
Wow.
He got charged with murder, and it was a bad situation. He killed someone in self-defense, but like the evidence wasn't really there, and no one would take his case because he had did a lot of dumb stuff as a kid, so he kind of had a record. And they wanted to stick him with a public defender who basically told him to like plead guilty and hope that the judge was nice to him and stuff. And he found an attorney who would take his case, who actually looked at the evidence and was like, yeah, no, this is clearly a case of self-defense. He was a really good attorney, but my dad couldn't afford to pay him because we were broke we were super broke. So he was like, no, I'll represent you for free. He's like, a certain part of my practice is pro bono, and I just help people that I feel like are really innocent. So he took my dad's case for free, went in, fought the good fight. They ended up pleading out like you always do. And he pled it down to manslaughter, and he got like I think he pled it out to 3 years. He'd already been in for 3 years, so he's in for like 6 years total.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember as a kid thinking like, wow, that is super cool. Like, this dude just saved my dad from going to jail for the rest of his life, And I saw the power of understanding the law and what it can do for you. Plus, he invited us to his house, this attorney, because he had kids who were like our age, and the house we went to me was like a mansion because me and all my brothers were sharing one bedroom in my grandma's tiny house, stacked on each other like cordwood. And this dude had like a big house with, he had arcade games in his garage, and he had, and this was like the 80s. So like to have arcade games at your house was mind blowing, and his kids were, they had all the best clothes, and he had a Mercedes. And I was like, dude, is this how attorneys live? Like, I want a little bit of that in my life, So that gave me the idea of maybe pursuing a career in the law. I didn't really make that decision until college. I was in college. I was at like community college, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I took some philosophy classes just because I was like, oh, I'm a deep thinker, I grew up in a really religious family, so we would always have deep philosophical discussions. And I hate the philosophy class, like, no problem. I was like, that was super easy. And everyone's like, oh, you're kidding me? Philosophy's so hard. I was like, oh, that was easy. So I just took another one, and they were just easy A's. They were easy A's for me. I was like, you read stuff, and then you argue about stuff. And one of my philosophy professors was like, yo, what are you going to do when you finish up, when you get your AA and you transfer to state school? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, let me tell you about, at Cal State Long Beach, they have a philosophy program with a pre-law emphasis. Like, it gets you ready for law school. He's like, hey, have you thought about law school? And I was like, now that you mention it, maybe. And he's like, you'd make a great attorney, because like a big part of philosophy class was arguing with each other in a respectful, logical way. And that was just my favorite part. Like I would just take any position. Like, oh, you want? Okay, let's debate. Come on, let's do this thing. And he, he saw that in me and was like, yeah, no, you'll be really good at this. So he called the professor that was running that department. Like, hey, I got somebody for you. I'm sending him down. Sign him up. And then philosophy major after that had all ended up because you get to pick your major. And I knew I wanted to go to law school at that point. Just doubling down. I had straight A's all through college, which is helpful if you want to go to law school. And I got a good score on the LSAT, which is the law school admission test.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is like the SATs. So those two things combined, I ended up I got waitlisted at UCLA. I didn't get into USC. I got into Loyola. I got into Chapman. I got into Southwestern. But Pepperdine, which is just kind of like a safety school, school I applied to just as a safety school. It's a great school, but they ended up offering me a full scholarship. So I was like, well, that decision is made. And then I was like, wow, this is really far away. I don't know if I can make the drive. So I had to do all that crazy commuting, leave at 5 a.m. every day. It's tough when you're 22, 23 years old, You're not used to getting up that early and putting in those kind of hours. But got to do what you got to do.
For sure. Archie looks like he's itching to ask a question.
Hit me, Archie. Hit me.
Yeah, man. That's cool. Let's get into like the martial arts part of it. Were you able to train at all, or were you training during school, or did you get any mat time?
Yeah, so my first year, which was the worst as far as the demand on my time, first year at law school. When I was an undergrad, I did karate, and I could move my schedule around. I worked full time, but I had a real flexible schedule and stuff. And I had no kids, so if I wanted to go to the gym at 8 o'clock at night and get it in, I could. But once you get kids, and then you got to change your schedule up. But in my first year of law school, I was only able to train just do like 2 days a week, and I would usually train in the evenings. No kids at that time again. But then after the first year, you get to make your own schedule. So I basically loaded myself up Tuesday, Thursday. I was basically at school from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I would go in and I would train in the morning. I'd come home and do my homework, and then I'd go back to the gym and train in the evening. So I'd do like 5 hours. I put like 5 hours in. And I would do like, a good 8 hours of homework though. Like they load you up in law school.
Yeah.
They don't mess around. You get so much reading. They literally, and I read a bunch of books like How to Succeed in Law School, right? Like I'm one of those guys like, all right, I got to get ahead of the curve here. Literally, because law school is a forced curve. They give you more work than you can do intentionally. And they do that because they know when you get to a firm and you're a junior associate, they're going to give you more work than you can do. And they just expect you to figure out a way to get it done and get into class and have the answers. And you just got to figure out a way to get it done and get into class and have the answers. And it's not like in undergrad or really any other school program, because they use the Socratic method. You guys know what the Socratic method is? Mm-hmm. It's a question answer method. So their way of educating you is to have you stand up and just hit you with questions about the reading. Mr. Brodnax, I always call you by your last name. What do you think about this piece of that? Do you think that was a tort? Do you think he was guilty? What do you think about this fact? Sometimes they'll ask you facts that weren't even there, that didn't even occur. Just to like keep you on your toes. And they'll throw curveballs at you. Well, okay, but what if this happens? They'll change the hypothetical. They'll change the facts. Well, sir, that wasn't in there. Okay, but I'm asking you now. Hypothetically, if that happened, how would that change things? And you're up in front of 200 kids who you don't know, and they're all smart, man. Like, boy, that was an eye-opening experience for me, because I was hot shit. I was hot stuff at Cal State Long Beach. I literally had the highest GPA in the entire department. I actually got hit up at my law firm. They call you for donations when you graduate from school. And the guy called me and he was like, "Hi, this is Nathan Brodnax." I was like, "Yeah, this is Nathan Brodnax." And he's like, "Hey man, I'm in the philosophy department over here." I was like, "Cool, man. Yeah, it's a great program." He's like, "The teachers here still talk about how you messed up every curve on every test that they gave." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, you're like the curve breaker. Like you broke every curve." I thought that was so funny. I was like, "Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's good to know." But then I got to law school, and every kid in law school is like that. Every kid in law school is the smartest kid from their school, smarter than me. A lot of these kids are smarter than me. And I just was like, oh crap. And here's the crappy thing too about my full ride, my scholarship. So it was academic scholarship, full scholarship. But they intentionally give out, to keep it, you need to be in the top 10% or you lose it. They give out more scholarships and there's going to be kids in the top 10%, knowing that a certain number of these kids, they'll get one free year. And then you're not going to leave. You're going to borrow money to stay. Right. So I was sweating it because I did not have the resources to pay for that school. And I actually had a friend and she lost her scholarship after first year. She was bummed out about it. She had to borrow and do loans and stuff. But man, I was stressing. I was like, dude, I got to keep this GPA up. These kids are all brainiacs. And the other thing that was getting into my psyche was the first day during orientation, they put you into groups, 8 to 10 kids. It's a meet and greet, blah, blah, blah. And you go around the group. Where'd you go to undergrad? What is your family like? And it was all trust fund kids. They all went to Berkeley and Stanford and all these big fancy schools. And I was like, I went to Cal State Long Beach. I was the only Cal State kid and the whole dang place. So that got into my head a little bit. Like, do I even belong here with these brainiacs? Like they all got perfect scores on their SATs and they all went to private high schools. Like, I don't think any of them had gone to public schools either, like a public high school. Not even the ones in my group. They didn't even know about that public school life, that free pizza you get, like they know nothing about that. So I was just like, damn, Nate, you gotta pull it together, bro. You gotta up your game here. So, I mean, I did. Obviously, I'm here today, but stressful.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of pressure going through high school or going through law school, and then trying to keep the grades up, and then still train. But then after you graduate, you took an amateur MMA fight. Was that all the aggression from school? You wanted to go into a fight or something?
That was a little while later. It's funny you say that because when Tiki, who runs HB Ultimate, I was training one day. I think him and I were like rolling, and he found out I was in law. He's like, "You're in law school?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, this is great for you, bro." He's like, "Get all that law school anger out on the mat." And I was like, "Yes, sir. Indeed, that is the plan." Yeah, no. The reason I decided to take do that amateur fight was just because I had a kid on the way. And I didn't know what my training situation was going to be like after that. And I was like, maybe I won't have any time to train. You hear all these stories of people having kids and then just falling off and letting themselves go. And I didn't want that to be me, but you never know. And I've been training with guys who were like fighting professionally. So I was like, well, if they could do professional fights and we train together and we do okay, I do okay, I could do an amateur fight against someone. It was fine. It was before the camo thing though. So it was really just show up at a gym. And there was a bunch of other gyms that were there, and they're like, you and you're the same size, you're gonna fight. You and you're gonna fight, and you just show up and fight somebody. It was cool though, it was fun. It was a good experience. But I got to my system. I'm sore the next day. This is what it feels like after you fight. God damn, I'm freaking sore. My shins were the most sore, man. God, they were like so swollen. And I've been doing a lot of Muay Thai. I was like, no, my shins are strong. My shins were so swollen. I remember the next day. Me and my wife had to go to the birthing class where they teach you Lamaze or whatever they're calling it now. And it was up like 4 flights of stairs. And it was so dumb. They have all these pregnant women walking up these stairs like the elevator wasn't working. But I think I was in more pain than she was because of my shins. I was like, like every step. And she's like, quit being a baby. She's like, I'm like 8 months pregnant. I'm like, I know. My shins are so swollen. They're so bad.
Man, that's a lot of discipline. I mean, with the martial arts discipline and with work, do you do any type of like mindset connections between the two, or
Yeah, I mean, and I tell my students this a lot in jiu-jitsu, that whatever you're working on, if it's jiu-jitsu or school or your legal practice or whatever, being on a positive mindset and breaking the problem down in little tiny bits, right? Like the old adage of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time is 90% of success. Like you get a lot of white belts that come in to jiu-jitsu. You guys remember what it was like to be a white belt in jiu-jitsu. I kind of miss out on that, honestly. Like if you know anyone who's comes from a wrestling background and they just transition into jiu-jitsu, like they never really got that white belt getting smashed experience as a white belt because they came in already knowing a bunch of stuff. So their experience was a little bit different. Like I had no problems just getting on top of people and just smashing them into the mat. And Junior actually pulled me aside and was like, hey, I know you can get on top of people and hold people down. I want you to be on your back. Like he put me on my back and just had me play guard for like the first year. Like I wasn't allowed to get on top of people, which was the total right thing to do. So I tell white belts that, or people that come in that have wrestling now, I'm like, yeah, great. You know how to take people down. You know how to hold people down. We don't need to work on that. Let's work on your guard. All right, let's work on that. But yeah, I tell the white belts when they come in, the new white belts who don't have prior grappling experience, that it's like drinking from a fire hose because there's so much you need to learn. You don't know how to move. Everything you're doing is wrong. You're going to get submitted. You're going to turn the wrong way. But if you just like think about one mistake every day, just pinpoint one mistake you made every day, and then figure out how to fix that one mistake and then just move on to the next one, and just look at it that way. Like you're not trying to become a black belt. You're just trying to fix one mistake a day, right? And if you do that, in 10 years you'll be a black belt, and you'll be a good black belt. That's literally the process, just fixing one mistake a day. Which is the great thing about jiu-jitsu, because we've got a built-in system for that. Because you get submitted, and you're thinking about that afterwards, the car ride home, that night at dinner. At least me, I'm on YouTube that night, like, oh, okay, I got something for you tomorrow. We're gonna see what's going on tomorrow. Sometimes I go find the guy that got me in it. I'm like, hey, you and me are going again, and I'll like try to put myself. I'll hang my arm out there. Yeah, let's do it again. And then sometimes the move won't work, the counter won't work, and you're like, it worked on YouTube. I think we've all been there.
Speaking of YouTube, I see you have a YouTube channel called BJJ for Breakfast. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that comes to fruition.
So that thing really just kind of started more as a service to my students, because we've got we're a really tight-knit group. Like if you're getting up and training at 6 a.m., you're a 6 a.m.er. It's the same people every day. That's the 6 a.m. crew, right? That's the only time they could train, right? And they're in there every day. And if someone's missing, like, where's Bob today? Where's Dave today, right? So we've got a WhatsApp thread, me and all my 6 a.m.ers. Now I think there's like 60 people on it. Keep adding new people. And we're always just talking ish to each other and sharing memes and, doing jiu-jitsu jokes and stuff. But guys would travel out of town, and then they would be like, hey, I'm going to be gone for a week, but I don't want to miss any material. Could you film it and then share it on the thread? Like, yeah. So I started doing that. I started sharing these. I just filmed the day's lesson. I put it on the thread. Guys would come back. They'd practice in their hotel room, or they'd find a school where they're at. I got a couple guys who, wherever they're traveling, one guy's a pilot, and he's whatever city he's in, man, he finds a local school, but he wants to keep up on the material because we're the home gym. So I started filming these moves, and one of the students was like, "Bro, you should start uploading these onto a YouTube channel. Like, this is good stuff." I was like, "Yeah, I think people would watch it." Like, totally. All right. I didn't want it to be like a third job for me, because I already got 2 jobs. So I was just uploading them raw footage, right? Like real low maintenance. I just film 2 or 3 moves a day and just upload them on the channel and put a little description in there. People would check them out and be like, "Yeah, this is good stuff. Thanks, bro. No problem." You guys saw it. Like, they're not edited. There's not cool effects or anything. But one of my students, Phil, is actually, this is what he does, these effects and, social media stuff. And he's good at it. And he was just like, "Hey, man, I could level up your channel if you want." I was like, "Yeah, if you're down to do it, I'll like pay you a little money, give you some private lessons or something. Like, I help the brother out." So yeah, he just started this week, and it as far as I'm concerned, it's like it looks way more professional. Yeah, way better. Content's the same, but it's a more palatable, eye-pleasing, package that it's wrapped in. It's a prettier packaging.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I try to do, like, you guys have been around, you've trained with a number of different people, and there's some, I've been in a lot of different schools and a lot of different coaches, and a lot of jiu-jitsu schools and coaches use kind of just like a shotgun method of teaching. Like, we're going to learn a new move today, and then we're going to roll. And the next day we're learning something else, and then we're going to roll. And coming from a wrestling background, like, that's not how you learn wrestling. That's not how I learn wrestling at all. It's a gradual building on each other, right? Like, you teach the double leg first, and then you teach the outside single, and then you teach how to turn the outside single into a double leg. Like, it all connects, right? And you do live action drills, and you do situational drills. This is there's all these studies that feel like when it comes to muscle memory and, like, body kinetics and stuff, and how your muscle, your neural network learns stuff. That's how you actually learn. Just drilling a move 5 or 6 times and then being expected to do it in a live roll is a pretty big ask. Neurologically, your body doesn't know what the heck to do. So when I started coaching, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this a little different. I'm gonna systematize stuff. Like, the lessons are gonna build on each other, right? Maybe we'll learn. Well, like this last week, we just did darces from different positions, a bunch of different darces, and then, like, we'll do a week of learning a move and then a week of learning the counter. But there's always situational, right? You'll drill it, and then we'll put you in that position, and then we'll do that for 2 minutes, and then you'll switch, and your partner will do it for 2 minutes. And you really you got to try the move out against a resisting opponent. That's what makes it so awesome, right? And it won't work. It won't work. I tell everyone, like, you got to fail at the move at least 10 times usually before it works. So get the failures out of the way. I'm gonna put you in the position to fail, and you're gonna try it, and it's not gonna work. And you're gonna fail 4 or 5 times, and then it'll work halfway, and then it'll work 60%, And before you know it, you're hitting it 85, 90% of the time. And that's where we want to speed up that process to get to there by putting you in the position to fail. So that's kind of how I run my classes. I got like a curriculum. It builds on itself. A lot of situational training. We're putting you in the position. I'll show you a position like De La Hiva, right? I couldn't get De La Hiva for the longest time. Like I couldn't make the position work. It's because like I had a really good closed guard for a long time. And it was just the type of position, as soon as I put someone in De La Hiva, they just flow through my guard and pass. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid, you know? So I started doing situational with myself and one of my other training partners. And I'm like, look, dude, I'm just going to start in De La Hiva and you just pass. And I'm going to just keep passing me until I could keep you in De La Hiva, until I could make something happen from De La Hiva. And yeah, he passed me 4 or 5 times, but eventually it took him 30 seconds and then a minute and then 3 minutes. And then eventually he couldn't pass it anymore, right? So now anytime anything happens where I get stuck or submitted, I just circle back and I'm like, hey, put me in that again. And we're going to keep doing it until I can get out or until I can stop it, right? I have one training partner, Keith, who has a really good sleeve collar, and he's giving me all kinds of problems with it. So I was just like, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go get you some stuff, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to do sleeve collar over and over and over again until I can pass your guard. That's kind of my view on whenever you're stuck on a problem. Like, find some moves, find some counters, and just put yourself in it until you. And sometimes you can just figure a way out. Like we were doing 411. You guys familiar with 411 inside Senkaku? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like Gordon Ryan's big thing, Danaher's. It's a pretty cool leg lock system. It's a really cool position. If you go to my YouTube channel, and we did a couple weeks on 411, find that material. But there's this really tough position you can get into called the Texas Cloverleaf, if you've ever heard of that. And man, like it's a very painful submission. And when you're in the inside Senkaku, that is like one of the hardest positions. And they have your leg in the 411 position. It's like one of the hardest positions to get out of. Like I bought a online tutorial to get proficient and to brush up on it. And the guy that was teaching it said that he was at a seminar like in Europe, and they were focusing on the 411 position and had like 300 people there, black belts, blue belts, white belts, all levels. And they did this experiment where they took all the black belts and they put them with a lower belt. And they told the lower belt, okay, hold the black belt in that position. So they put them in mount. Hold the black belt down. You're mounting them. Black belt would get out. Okay, put them in side control. Black belt would get out. Take their back. Black belt would get out. Okay, now put the black belt in 411. Black belt's going to get out. Like that's how much of a dominant position it is, right? And when you have that Texas Cloverleaf, it's even worse. It's even worse because now they're cranking your leg. There's an ankle lock. There's a knee submission going on. It's like 4 submissions in one. So I couldn't find a counter and I couldn't find an escape. I was looking everywhere. I was looking at tutorials. I was asking people. Everyone's like, just don't get in it. That was their answer. Just don't get in it. I'm like, but what if I get in it? I want to be able to get out. So I got 2 of my training partners, and we just stayed after class one day, and I just had them put me in it over and over and over and over, and I started moving my feet, my legs in different ways, and eventually, like we hacked it. We figured out what we figured out. Well, when I point my toes like this, the submission doesn't hurt, and then when I pull my leg like this, well, now I can get my leg out, and we just figured out an escape and a counter just through trial and error. It was pretty cool, and I was like, this is how new moves are made. This is awesome.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation between your philosophy background and legal background and the way you approach jiu-jitsu?
I definitely think there is. Like they say, jiu-jitsu is like the thinking man's sport, right? And I mean, there's definitely athleticism and speed and all that stuff plays a role, especially now that I'm getting older. 42, not quite as athletic and quick as I used to be. But I think the problem solving analytical aspect of it is very much the same. Like I don't know how many people do this, but if you don't, you should. Like I have a jiu-jitsu notebook and I write notes down after class of stuff that didn't work, stuff that worked really well, ideas I have, right? Of like, well, I wonder if I could get to this position from this position. Like we did that I think we did like 2 weeks on the 411, and I found like 3 new ways to get in that position that I never even thought of, and that I have seen, I haven't even seen anyone do yet. So I'm sure other people have done it, right? But I just kind of came to it organically, like, oh, well, if I flip this person, put my leg here, now we're in the 411. But it goes back to kind of what I was saying a few minutes ago of just like breaking everything down into its constituent components, the little bite-sized chunks, and then problem solving. And it's the same thing in philosophy. Like Plato had this idea of everything has like a fundamental form. I don't know if you guys ever read any Plato. and you could boil things down to the fundamental form, like its essence, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then in the legal world, it's very similar. When you're trying to make a legal argument, right, you got to boil it down. Like in law school, this is something that trips a lot of people out. They don't teach you the law in law school, right? They don't. They teach you how to think like a lawyer. They teach you how to peer through the facts and find the underlying legal concepts that you can then apply to all the different factual scenarios. Because you're never going to be able to memorize all the factual scenarios. But if you understand the fundamental legal premise behind negligence, right, or intentional homicide, or whatever it is, you can apply it to any number of facts, right? And it's the same, very similar in jiu-jitsu. Like there's a one guy on YouTube, Jordan Peaches, that I follow. This is the guy, he's really good.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he talks about concepts over techniques. And techniques obviously are great, but it's more important to understand the concepts behind the techniques. Why does this move work, right? Why, when I'm doing butterfly, do I need to have my hips underneath my opponent, right? Why, when I'm shooting a double leg, do I need to have my hips underneath my shoulders and my head up, right? So I can get better with it, right? The fundamental concepts behind leverage, the fundamental concepts behind the guard, right? Getting their knees pointed away from you and their feet pointed away from you so that you can pass. Controlling your other opponent's hips and legs when you're playing guard, like the concepts, right? And it's the same thing. Legal concepts, philosophical concepts, jiu-jitsu concepts over techniques. Although the techniques are good too. But it's like you got to build the foundation, you know? If you, teaching brand new white belts really makes you understand how important it is to build a strong foundation in jiu-jitsu, because when they come in and they literally know nothing, they've never been on the ground with another person grabbing them, you see how they just move completely incorrect. They do everything wrong. I think it was $1 Million Baby. There's a quote in that movie where Clint Eastwood says in the beginning that teaching someone to fight is teaching their body to do unnatural things, right? And that's fighting. A lot of your natural instincts to turn away from the pain, right? When someone has you on the ground, to roll away from them and give them your back, that's what you naturally want to do. It'll get you killed, right? That's what gets you killed. And you need to just explain just the basic facts of grappling to people, from day one. Like, look, this is why the guard works. Because you're wrapping the strongest part of your body, your legs, around their center of gravity. That's why the guard works. Now I have my legs around your hips. I can control your posture. I can knock you side to side. I can keep you close so you can't punch me. You're on top of me, and I'm under you. You've got gravity on your side. If you were to hit me, you would have full force of your weight behind your punch, and I'm going to get hit twice because you're going to hit me, and then the ground's going to hit the back of my head, right? And you have to explain all this stuff to people who've never done any martial arts, done any combat, done any jiu-jitsu, and then they're like, oh, okay, so that's why the guard, even before you start teaching them, well, I can armbar people from the guard. I could sweep. I could do this really cool what-would-you-do move, right? They don't even need to know that. They just need to know, why is it bad to have someone on top of you, right? Why is it bad to be underneath another human being? Why is it better to have them in your legs when they're on top, right? Like, these are the real fundamentals. Then you build from there.
So what does your training look like now?
I train, I teach 5 days a week, so I do that every day. And then I train on the weekends at the UFC gym with whatever class they're going, or guys just come in and we just, my students come in and we just put an extra time next to work. But like, I watched some video the other day about how to tell if you're at like a Bullshido jiu-jitsu school, like a fake jiu-jitsu school. One of the number one warning signs is that the coach won't roll with anybody. That's what one of my students told me. And he's like, no one's ever going to mistake this for a Bullshido jiu-jitsu school. I roll with everybody. If it's your first day, you're rolling with coach. Because that's the number one way I could figure out what you know. So whenever a new person comes in, if they come from another school, purple belt, brown belt, blue belt, like I roll every day, every roll that I can get in with every student that I can get in. And if it's your first day, you're rolling with coaches. Sometimes people are a little like, I don't know, they think I'm going to beat them up or something. They're the safest rolling with me, honestly. Like, I'm not going to spaz out on them. I just want to see what they know. A lot of times I'll let them put me in a bad position. Like, does this guy know how to take the back? Do they know how to pass guard? Do they know what's going on? But that's my way. That's my gauge. You could tell a lot about a grappler when you grapple as much as I do within the first 35 seconds, really. Like, tie up with them. They do a couple moves. I do a couple moves, and I can already kind of like, okay, It's about where you are. You're a good purple belt, or you're a blue belt, or you're a strong white belt. Sometimes you get like a squirrely, like used to wrestle, like one of those, right? Like used to wrestle. Yeah, I used to wrestle because you've got, you got no guard passing and no guard, but you're good in the scramble and you've got good side control and your double leg looks good. So how many years did you wrestle? Like that type of thing. And then you got some people just pull guard right away, like, oh, where'd you do this before? Who's your coach? That type of thing. But yeah, so I do that, and I get a lot of training in my 5 days a week. I mean, honestly, at 42, every day can't be a battle royale. I got some of my students are really young, competitive. They compete. A couple of them are like wrestlers or wrestling coaches. So they're tough to keep up with. So I gotta maintain my own health and fitness. I do the jiu-jitsu class every morning, and then usually at lunch I'll do a workout. So like weights and cardio. I got a rower and a Olympic bar in my garage, and I'll usually go out there and get an hour of Olympic lifting and cardio in, just to stay in shape and keep my joints strong.
On your own, or you have somebody coach?
Yeah, I used to do like CrossFit at a CrossFit gym. It was just getting too much on my body. Like my body started wearing down, man. It was like a solid, hour and a half of jiu-jitsu in the morning with like 5 rolls and takedowns and all that stuff, and then go, shower, do 3-4 hours of work, and then go do CrossFit, and then wake up and do it again. That's unless you're on some gear or something, that's hard to do for us mortals. Maybe in my younger days. When I was, like I said, when in my 20s, I was working out 5 hours a day. Felt okay. Now I brush my teeth weird. I get a pulled muscle in my neck. So, getting old sucks. It's better than the alternative, though, of dying, so I'll take it.
Oh, man. Well, I wanted to ask you, you just got your black belt in January, is that correct?
January. Yep.
So is there any chance that Nathan Brodnax is going to compete in a tournament anytime, or?
Possibly. I'm looking for a stretch where I could stay healthy. Where I'll usually have like a good 3 to 4 weeks where I start feeling like, all right, I'm no serious injuries. I'm feeling pretty good. I haven't had COVID in a few months. I feel like I could, start getting ready for a competition. And then usually I'll go down with something. Get COVID again. Or I had a really bad knee injury that, man, it kept me basically grappling with one leg for like 6 months. It was tough. I couldn't really do any takedowns. I had to change up I couldn't do any daily Hiva, anything that required me wrapping my leg around anyone else. But it made me change up my game. So that's good. I look at every negative, try to flip it into a positive. I remember when I first transitioned from karate to MMA, I was training with my buddy Rob McCullough, and I had learned how to do karate kicks, which are very different than Muay Thai kicks. And I was very much a point karate style. I had a point karate style sparring, methodology. And he was trying to teach me more of like a Muay Thai style sparring methodology. And the kicking and the punching and how you stand, it's all just very different. And he was saying, like, it's much easier to train someone from scratch than to untrain you and then to retrain, right? He's like, I don't have to take someone that knows nothing and teach them how to kick and punch. He's like, you already have your own way of kicking and punching, so you have to, like, untrain your brain and then retrain your brain, which I ultimately did do. And then it ended up being really good because I could do both. I could alternate between flippy karate kicks or Muay Thai kicks, and it made me pretty versatile. But the thing that really helped me was I hurt my knee real bad at one point, and I couldn't kick at all for like 6 or 7 months. So I just boxed, and I just got real good at like evasive footwork and being in the corner and being in the pocket. And that was something I always avoided because in point karate, it's all about staying outside, getting inside, and then getting back outside, right? Like Leona Machida style, right? So sitting in the pocket was not something that I did. It wasn't something I was comfortable with. Anytime anyone tried to get in the pocket with me, I'd always like push kick and circle out and stay away. And Rob would just be like, just stay in there. Just straight blows, you got to get comfortable in the pocket. And I'm like, nah, I don't really want to do that. But then when I couldn't kick, I didn't have that option. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to focus on boxing. I'm just going to sit in the pocket. I'm going to let people put me against the ropes and fight off the ropes. And it changed up my whole game. And then I was able, like, all right, we'll sit in the pocket. From the outside, I'll hit you with some spinny, flashy stuff. From the inside, I'll hit you with some boxing. It made me a much better fighter. Same thing when I switched. When I started at UFC Gym, like I said, I had a really good close guard, so I never bothered learning any open guard stuff. Like I didn't need it; people would just blow by. So I made a deal with myself. And I told one of my training partners, I was like, "Hey, I'm not going to do any close guard anymore. like 0 for like 6 months. So you're going to be effing me up. You're going to be messing me up. Everyone's going to be messing me up. And they did for a couple weeks, man, but it didn't take long. It didn't take long for the open guard to start developing. And now I like it more. It's funner, you know. I run single leg X, daily Hiva, I run all that stuff, put it all together, beer and bolo, take some backs, do all that fun stuff. But you got to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. You got to get outside your comfort zone. And it was really easy for us to fall into that. Like I recently forced myself to make a change in my training, especially when you're, on the coast. A lot of times I'm the best guy on the mat, so I need to put myself in bad positions. So I have 2 days a week now. It's just bad position days. I just, I'll pick a position. They have my back. They have my arm. I'm on an arm bar. They're halfway to a triangle, and I'll just have every person start me. Every person in the class that I roll with starts like that. So now they even say like, "What are you working on today?" I'm like, "Well, we're doing triangles. Put me in a triangle," and then they'll try to finish me. And then they're gonna say they tapped out coach if they catch me. They'll be on the thread talking shit. I tapped coach today, and then someone else will be like, "He lets you start all the way in a full triangle. Doesn't count, but it counts. I mean, whatever, But you get good at getting out of triangles that way. And then I got a little complacent in like always playing guard. So I got one day that's only guard passing. Like I only focus on passing guard. I never start on my knees. I never start on my butt. I'll only try to pass guard. If I somehow end up on my back, like somehow they're able to reverse me on top, I'll just put out and then I'll stand back up and I'll go back to trying to pass their guard. And then I did another day where it's only leg locks. I won't do any, even if a submission presents itself, triangle, arm bar, I'll just pass it up and look for a leg lock because I really wanted to start developing my leg lock game because I felt like that was a hole in my game. A lot of schools don't focus on leg locks, and there's some schools that will focus the hell out of leg locks. So if you're not training leg locks and you encounter someone from that school, it's like,
that's game over.
You know jiu-jitsu? Like they know how to attack half your body, and you don't know how to defend it. It's like they're swimming and you're treading water. So you really gotta, I was like, I need to work on this. So I've got designated days where I focus on specific things. It really forces you to get better at your gaps, to fill in your gaps.
Oh. On the topic, you mentioned something about being complacent in jiu-jitsu. Was there anything in your career working wise where you felt like that and you had to change something at all?
Yeah, I think obviously when I left my other firm and went out and started my own firm, that was very motivating for me to start getting out there and hustling up some business. But I would say, like in your working world, whatever career you're doing, if you do something that you like to do, it will make it so that you put more. You're not resentful about putting time and energy into it. So like I really like the area of the law that I practice now in my firm. The bulk of my business is helping people start businesses and sell businesses and merge businesses. It's very business oriented. And that's a really cool thing to do because you're helping people a lot of times chase a dream, fulfill a dream, get out from under a dream that didn't work out for them, and it's rewarding. They're like, man, this is so awesome. I'm so psyched. Thank you for helping me. Having been a business owner myself, and made some mistakes and been in the business world, I feel like not only am I giving like legal advice, but like I've seen through past clients and through my own experience what can go wrong and how expensive it could be and what an expensive lesson it could be. So it's definitely a good feeling to be able to impart that wisdom and prevent people from making the same mistakes that I've seen other people make.
Awesome. I want to jump in here real quick. So part of the show is Archie's a chiropractor.
Yeah.
And has ambitions to open his own practice here. The timeline we have on it is this time next year. So knowing
is it like fusion energy? It's always like this time next year, but next year, or is it definitely this time next year?
Fall.
It comes this time next year. Awesome. All right, good stuff. Set a date. Stick to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So part of the show is as we're speaking with operators, being able to share, some recommendations or best practices of what you would recommend Archie to do from a legal standpoint, and even from your own experience standpoint. I mean, what would be some of the fundamental things that you would encourage Archie to
you're
do?
Definitely going to want to set up a company. Chiropractors, I believe, have to set up professional corporations. doctors and lawyers and accountants, right? So that's an extra step beyond just setting up a corporation. You then have to register it as a professional corporation in the state. Setting up a business entity, corporation in your instance, is a smart thing to do for a number of reasons. First of all, especially as a chiropractor, it will protect you from a liability standpoint. If something goes wrong, or you're gonna want to have insurance, obviously, but you're also going to want to have the liability protection of the business entity, because if they sue you, they're suing the business, not you individually. So they can't take your house or your car, kids saving, your kid's college account, right? They only take whatever the company has. That's why most people start. And then you also have, of course, the tax benefits of having a business and business expenses and business deductions and tax write-offs and stuff. So I would say definitely do that. I imagine you're going to hire some employees at some point.
Yes.
Always do employment agreements, right? It'll protect you because there's certain waivers and stuff that you're going to want to put in there to protect you. But also it just lets everyone know the score, right? These are your expected hours. These are your expected job duties. This is the deal. So if they ever come back and say like, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that, or you never told me that, or whatever, you should say, no, you signed right here saying you would do this, right? And I signed it saying I would pay you this much money for doing it, and you didn't do it, right? So that's always a good idea. And are you going to have any partners, or are you going to just kind of do a solo thing?
Just me.
Okay,
and my
good.
wife.
Okay. She a chiro too, or?
No, she's a athletic trainer, so she'll be doing.
Okay.
We plan on having her do more of the physiotherapy stuff.
Physical therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Is she going to be well? She's going to be. Is she going to be like an owner?
I don't know yet.
Don't know if you're going to be able to. I don't think you're going to be able to do that because I got to go and check. I'm not sure. So like in a law firm, only lawyers can be owners of the law firm, right? Same thing with like medical organizations like doctors. Only a doctor can be an owner of a doctor's group, right? I'm not sure if that's the case with chiros. I got to check. But if that is the case, he couldn't be an owner on paper, obviously. But what's yours is hers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
50-50 community property state. You still get half if you got out of line. So there's still that level of ownership. But that's cool. Working with your wife. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's some mainstream.
Yeah.
That's some mainstream. So good for you, sir. Good for you.
Nathan, so I have another question in relation to that. So you've had, quite an adventure, right? And one thing that I admire about, even just your story as a whole, everything that you seem to have a passion, you just chase and you just do it.
Yeah.
For someone that is aspiring to be a business owner, they have an idea, or maybe they want to, do something different, go from one career into something else. What would be some advice you would give someone?
Yeah. Yes, I have chased whatever I wanted and things I was passionate about, but I feel like that ultimately got me into trouble because I was chasing too much stuff, right? And that's when I was like, because like at the same time, I was a partner at the firm, I also was owning and operating a UFC gym, right? And that's kind of when you and I first met, Ben.
Right.
And that was, being a partner in a firm, running the firm. I was running that firm, right? Like it was over 200 employees. I was managing like 30 lawyers, and I was trying to build a business up off the ground, a gym business, which is not the easiest business. It's not the easiest business in the world to run. The idea there was that, I kind of want to get it out. I wanted to get out of the legal practice, and I really love martial arts and I love fitness. And I was like, this is something I would want, I like to do. But it was just too much. Like I'd bitten off more than I could chew, right? Ultimately, it didn't end up panning out, the gym thing, and I had to sell it. But I learned a lot about the lifestyle that I did want, right? And what really mattered and what didn't matter. So when I kind of planned out my next venture, which was my own law firm, I took a lot of the lessons that I had learned from the gym and from the other firm that I was at, because it was a big firm. We had a big building and we had all these expenses and we had all these clients. It was a high volume firm, so it was very churn and burn type of thing. And I realized like I don't want to do that, right? The gym business was cool because I got to do the martial arts stuff, but there was a lot of overhead. And the things that I loved about the martial arts and the fitness actually got drowned out by the business side of it, by the work side of it. It wasn't fun anymore, right? It was like all just getting members, selling members, right? And I didn't get to focus on the actual martial arts, is what I really like to do. So when I sat back and thought about the kind of the life I wanted to construct, I said, okay, I want to work in a practice area that I enjoy, helping people with their businesses. Like I had identified that. I want to work for myself because I don't ever want to have to work for anyone else again. I want to be able to rely on myself. I want to keep my overhead low, right? I don't want a bunch of employees that I need to feed, because if things get slow and you got to do layoffs, that's really tough. I had to do that a couple of times at my firm. Didn't enjoy it. Didn't want to have to do it again. So the firm that I constructed was basically me as a solo practitioner with a virtual paralegal who's a contract employee who works for other attorneys too. So if I'm not using her, she's got work from somewhere else. He doesn't rely on me to, keep her fed. I have a virtual office, right? So I don't have any rent or any overhead. So that way, basically everything I bill, I get to keep, right? And I'm just reliant on my own effort to drum up business and to do good work product and to get word of mouth referrals. And when times are lean, that's just me. I don't have to worry about, this year we can't give out Christmas bonuses and all the pissed off emails from employees, all that stuff, right? It's just me. And I just got to keep my family fed. I got to keep work coming in the door. And the coaching of the jiu-jitsu thing allows me to pursue my passion, something that I would pay to do, right? I was paying to do. I now get paid to do, right? And, it's not, I'm not getting rich doing it monetarily, but I am getting rich doing it, from a lifestyle and a lifestyle perspective, and from a, engagement, social dynamic perspective. Like I have all these students that I love interacting with on a daily basis. I get to focus down and really think deeply about jiu-jitsu. Like, when you show up to a class, you're relying on someone else to think about jiu-jitsu for you, right? They're doing the thinking. Your coach is doing the thinking and telling you, this is the move you need to know, right? But when you're the coach, you've got a coach, you got someone you can go and ask, but a lot of times you're going to run into stuff that even they're like, oh, I don't know, man. And then you just got to think it out. You just got to figure it out. But then I realized, like, that's what all the best jiu-jitsu people in the world, like all the other black belts and my coaches, through the years, you think that like there's this magical laser beam of knowledge that hits your professor and they have all the answers, but they're just figuring stuff out a lot of times too, because there's an infinite number of combinations of the human body and techniques and varieties, right? So especially now, it's like with YouTube, that's been like steroids for the development of new moves. My students always bring me stuff. Coach, did you see this move? What would you do? And I'm like, no one's ever done that move in the history of jiu-jitsu. That person just invented that move. There's not a counter to it. Let me think about it. Put me in it. Let me see. I'll try to figure something out. And the stuff's being invented every single day, at ADCC and at the Worlds and stuff. YouTubers, these people on the internet are making up new stuff every single day. But the beauty of being a coach is you get to think deeply about jiu-jitsu. You get to watch the stuff and you get to say, like, why is that working? Why is that move bad? And then you get to try it, and then you get to dissect it. You're like, well, it works because I'm shifting the leverage this way. So if he just put his foot there, then it's not going to work anymore. And then you try it, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the counter. And when they try to do that, move your body that way, and then it won't work. And that's super rewarding, right? It's like doing a crossword puzzle or any other problem-solving thing you've ever done that has that, like, whatever, gyms. What's the gym game people play on their phone? Words with Friends. That's another one. Sure. Whatever these puzzle games that you play, you get like a little dopamine hit when you figure it out. Like you get that feeling. You get that feeling as a coach. It's really cool. And I got that feeling a little bit, as a student. But again, I had someone doing all the thinking for me, feeding me the answers and stuff. But now I'm the guy that has to come up with the answers. And if I can't ask my coach or find it on YouTube, I just got to figure it out, and workshop it, which honestly is the most rewarding way. It's not the quickest way, but it's the most rewarding way to figure something out in jiu-jitsu, because you're just like, man, I was presented with this problem, and just through different combinations of my own body and physics, right? Jiu-jitsu is physics. I figured out a solution. It's really cool. I actually saw on YouTube the other day, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this, but there's a jiu-jitsu school. I don't know if this isn't how I would teach it, but I think it's a really neat idea where they teach you no techniques and they do no drilling. They teach. Yeah, right. That's what I was like, all of their jiu-jitsu, they just put their students, brand new white belts off the street, don't know jack about grappling. They put him in a position, like they say get in side control. They lay one guy on top of the other, and they say get out, and they just figure out a way to get out. And they do everything that way. That's how they do all their moves, right? They put you in the guard, and they say get past this guard. Let's figure out a way to do it. And you would think like that's dumb. Like what? I told one of my students that, and he's like, well, what are you paying for if the coach is putting you in the position and having you figure your way out? But, understanding the importance now of like figuring out your own method to solve these problems and the importance of like situational training, being in that position and workshopping it. I see that could be an effective way to figure out a lot of stuff. I feel like it's a slower process. Like I can, you could study for a test by just buying the encyclopedia and just memorizing the whole thing. Or I could tell you, the test is going to be on geology, specifically these types of rocks. And that gives you a shortcut right to it, right? Or I can give you the clip notes or the study guide, right? So coaches, I feel like our job is to give you the clip notes and the study guide. This is the important stuff. But it's up to you to figure out how it works in your game. That school seems like they're just doing that other part, right? Just figuring out how it works in your game and just figuring out the game part. So it's interesting. They've got like world champions at their school. I looked at their school. They've got some gold medal winners all through this methodology.
That's fascinating.
Super fascinating. Yeah.
I had a question just pop up in my head, and I was thinking about the Socratic method.
Yeah.
You as a professor and your students, do you apply that Socratic method on your students?
It's interesting you say that because I heard someone on an interview talking about jiu-jitsu. It was another podcast. I don't know if it was Jocko's podcast. And he describes jiu-jitsu as a conversation of asking questions back and forth. And the guy that doesn't have an answer first loses. And I thought that was, at least at the higher levels, it was so apt of a description, right? Which is why, it's hard to explain to the white belts to just calm down and to breathe because you don't know any moves, right? So they're relying 100% on energy and effort and strength, right? But once you get past purple belt and you have an arsenal of moves, it's all just question answer, right? I run, they leave it. Remember in the start of Princess Bride when they're fencing, him and the one arm or the black mask guy, and they're fencing? You guys remember this movie? Princess Bride? What? Oh my God! Pause this. Go watch Princess Bride and come back. I can't believe you haven't seen that movie. Okay, watch it your kids are a little old. It's a great movie, man. It's super good. But there's a scene in the movie, I'll explain it, where these two really good fencers are fencing. And they're both so impressed with each other's techniques. And he's like, oh, I see you're using the capoeira attack. He's like, yeah, but I find that the faveli defense counters that, unless they know the Macarena counter. And they're like calling out all these techniques that they're doing on each other, and they're backflipping and they're doing all this stuff. And they're like, oh, you were so good. No, you were so good. He's like, there's something you don't know. I'm really left-handed. And he switches swords and they fight a little bit. He's something you don't know. I'm really left-handed too. And they switch swords again. It's this great exchange, right? But that when you're rolling with someone who's good at jiu-jitsu and you've got an arsenal and they've got an arsenal, that's what it feels like, right? Like, oh, you're going to try De La Hiva on me? All right, bro. I'm a back step pass. Oh, you know that? Oh, well, now I'm a Barambola. Oh, you're going to do that? Okay, well, try out my butterfly. How do you like that? Oh, now we're doing single leg X? Okay, I got something for you. Try my darts, right? Oh, you got out of that? And that flow state when you're rolling with someone who has moves, you have moves, and you're counter. It's a conversation, right? It's just through language. And you're going back and forth. And the guy who runs out of responses first loses. So it's like the Socratic method, right? With our bodies, like I'm asking you questions, you have answers, but I'm getting Socratic methoded back because you're also interrogating me with your own questions, right? And I better have answers to that. So it is like that, but it's a two-way conversation. It was like if I had been allowed when my law school professors were hitting me rapid fire with all these questions to start asking him questions and see if he had answers, that would have been what it was like. Which actually, I had that experience in one of my philosophy classes in undergrad. One of my teachers, super smart guy, really good understanding of philosophy, did not like Plato. Not a Plato fan, and I liked Plato. Like it was something I had read a number of times. I enjoyed it. He was very philosophical, kind of borderline on some Christianity concepts, which I had a lot of experience with. And he was just ripping it up. He was just pooping on it. So he started asking me all these questions. So in the Republic, Plato's Republic, Plato makes this argument that Plato wasn't a big fan of democracy. He thought that the person running the show, lo and behold, could be a philosopher, right? Could be a philosopher king. You ever hear that statement, that term, the philosopher king? It comes from Plato's Republic. That if we had a philosopher who was like a benevolent king who was in charge, thinking deep thoughts about what's best for humanity, he would be the perfect monarch. He would always be introspective and thoughtful and deliberate in his thought process, and he would make the best choices rather than just a gaggle of plebes voting on stuff. That's what he thought about democracy. Or a tyrant king, which is really what the Greeks had a lot of experience with, because all around them were absolute monarchs that did whatever they wanted, especially to the east, the Persians. And my professor just thought that was the dumbest idea. That a philosopher king would be a monarch. So I was like, I don't think you're giving Plato. So him and I got into an argument in class about it. He was challenging me. He's like, does anyone really think that's a good idea? I was like, I kind of think it's a good idea. And he's like, why? He's like, well, what about this? He's like, what about an evil genius, right? What about, Dr. Evil on his island? He's a genius and he's got the super intellect, but he thinks deep thoughts all day long about how to take over the world and how to make $1 million and how to this, that, and the other thing. And we're going around and around. And then I was like, all right, well, look, though, I was like, you're not giving Plato his argument fair shake, because you're forgetting that he has this whole alignment of virtues. And if the philosopher king, if his virtues are in alignment, like they should be, like Plato thinks they should be, and they're holding the benefit of the community in the highest regard, which is what he says should be the highest virtue, then you would never have an evil genius philosopher king. And it was like right at the end of class, and he goes, you know what? You're right. And all the kids were like, oh, you got him to admit he was wrong. He's like, yeah, you're right. He's like, okay, good point. And class dismissed. Got you, sir. It was a pretty good feeling. And it's actually what I did my term paper on that year. How you can never have an evil genius philosopher king. I got an A. He gave me an A. He was like, okay, don't rub it in.
That was awesome.
He wrote me a really good recommendation for law school. It's funny, though. I saved the letter because I saw the letter and he goes, I'm paraphrasing, I haven't read it in a while, but it was something to the effect of, Nathan Brodnax would be an excellent law school candidate. He's got one of the keenest philosophical minds I've ever encountered. My one regret is that he's going to waste his gift on practicing the law. That's what he said in my law school recommendation letter. I was like, bro, Robbie, his name was Robbie. I was like, Robbie, I can't send this to my law school. He's like, it's fine. He's like, they just want to hear that you were a good student. I was like, you're not going to write me another one? He's like, no, that's the one you get. All right, man. Thanks. Appreciate it, sir.
Hey, so I got one last question before we start wrapping up. Did that gift of banter, was that something that you grew up with? Is that because you had brothers, or?
Are you saying I have a gift of banter? Then I mean, I guess maybe my wife just thinks I talk too much. She thinks I like to hear my own voice. I don't know. It was funny though. Another side story. When I got my black belt, you guys will be there someday. Archie, you'll be there soon. You're supposed to give a speech, right? You guys been to black belt ceremonies? You're supposed to give a speech. And my buddy Keith got his black belt with me, and then my buddy Jordan. And I hit up Coach Jamie, who gave me my black belt. I was like, hey, yo, so we're supposed to make a speech, right? He's like, yeah, nothing crazy. I was like, yeah, so like I wrote mine out, and I practiced it in front of the mirror, and it's like 15 minutes long. Is that okay? And he was like, nah, dog, that's too long. That's too long. You got to cut this thing down, son. And I was like, all right, I'll go back and rework it. I cut a bunch of stuff out. I crossed out a bunch of names. And I went back, and I was like, I got it down to 10 minutes, dude. Can we do 10 minutes? And he was like, well, you got to give everyone else a chance to talk too. I was like, yeah, but Keith doesn't want to give a speech. Like, yeah, Keith did not want to give a speech. Keith's like, Nate can have he's like, make it 5 minutes. Keith's like, Nate can have my 5 minutes. He's like, I'm going to give like a 1 minute speech and Nate can do the rest. And I was like, all right. That's why I got to do a 10-minute black belt speech, was just because my buddy, Keith, although his ended up being longer than once you get up there and you're talking in front of people and things kick in and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like I've always been a talker. You think I'm long-winded verbally, right? In writing, I was much longer-winded, very prolix, I think is the word. And that was great in philosophy, because in philosophy, the more you could talk about tiny minutia concepts, the better, right? That's why I was able to get A's. I'm like, oh, I could bullshit about, whatever, Plato's forms. I'll write 60 pages on that, no problem. But then you
Wow.
get into law school and they want a different type of writing. They still want logical, analytical process, but judges don't want to read 100 pages on one tiny element, right? They want clear, concise, boiled down arguments. And my first year of law school, I was a 1L, and they put you with a 3L who is finishing up 3 years of school, right? And they're like your mentor, right? And the very first thing I wrote for law school, the teacher was like, okay, this is going to be 1 page. I want you guys to do this brief in 1 page. Don't go over. And I sat down to write it, and I just could not make it 1 page, man. I was trying my damnedest. It ended up being like 2 pages, and that was like me cutting out all these arguments and shortening all this stuff. I was like, all right, I just can't cut this out. I can't cut this out. This is too important. So I turned it into my mentor, my 3L buddy, and he looks at this man, and he's like, dude, this is way too long. You could chop a lot of this out. And I was like, I can't get it shorter than it was like 1 page and 3/4. He's like, well, you're going to need to, because she said 1 page and she meant double space. This is single space. This is 4 times longer. And he's with me. And I was like, oh my God, I want to fail out of law school if I can't even do it. And he was like, don't worry, don't sweat it, son. He's like, I'm going to show you. Like, all this can go. Go back and rewrite it. And I got it down to a page. I was like, oh, none of that's needed. He's like, no, the court already knows all that. They're already assuming these facts. You don't got to tell the whole preamble story. Just this piece right here. I was like, oh. He's like, this piece? You start with like 1 paragraph. He's like, that's perfect. That's an A. Cut everything else out. I was like, oh, you the man. And then I was there after that. But I'm long-winded. I think I am a middle child, and I did have 5 brothers. And I was telling my wife to be heard in my house, because you imagine a house full of rowdy boys. And dad's not there. We were just wild children. To be heard, you had to be like loud. You had to, really stand out and make a scene. And I was a middle child, and I wanted to be heard, so I was loud and I stood out to make a scene. It stuck with me, I guess.
I mean, it's a great gift, man, just to be able to take a position. And I'm gonna sit here. We're gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna drive my point home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's a great skill to have in life. Obviously, it's a necessary skill in business. Obviously, in the type of business you're in as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean that in itself, it seems that came very natural to you, and for you to be able to get into that kind of dialogue where you can submit your professor is
a verbal submission, analytical submission. So, that was definitely the highlight of that whole course, man. He was a really smart guy. I learned a lot from him. He was vicious, though. He used to tear my papers up. I needed it, but he was heartless. What is this? He's one of those guys like, put this crap out. This is terrible. I was like, damn, that was pretty good. No, son. No.
I bet you after he threw up the white flag, it even came in stronger, huh?
Yeah, well, I was real worried about that. Like I said, that was my term paper, was that same argument. And I was like, oh, maybe he'll maybe he's gone back. I thought maybe he went back and thought of a counter argument. He's going to be like, nah, what about this? What about this? But no, he was like, yeah, this is all good. It's well reasoned. It's well articulated. Here's an A. Good luck. Good luck in law school.
That's awesome. Get out of here. Get out of here, Brodnax.
Get out of here. Quit embarrassing me. Get out of my class. Yeah, no, he was good. He was harsh, though. He was harsh. But he got me ready for law school, because that's what law school is like. So it was interesting in law school because there's a lot of kids. You can do any major for law school. So there's a lot of poli-sci kids. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of kids, English, studies, English literature, kids that read a lot. There was a couple of kids that had STEM degrees. But none of those majors prepared you for the Socratic questioning, like philosophy, because that's all we did in philosophy. Is the teacher was like, well, what about this? What do you think about this? And you just get up and you start arguing and debating. And it was very light, though. It wasn't like law school where the teachers were trying to make you, they were the teachers in law school were specifically trying to trip you up, because they knew that's what it would be like in court when the judge is asking you questions, or when the other side is raising counter arguments on the fly in front of the judge, right? You make a motion in court, and you've got to justify it right then, and they've got to counter argue it right then. So you got to have all the facts memorized. You got to have the legal knowledge dialed in, ready to go, and you just got to hit them with it. I remember one time I was at my old firm. I was in court, and this guy was trying to get this case removed to a jury trial, and he'd already waived it. He missed the deadline. And the judge, though, because his lawyer was making a really good argument, the judge, though, was inclined to give it to him. The guy was like a hard luck case. This is back when I used to work at my other firm. I worked for the bank. So I got to go in there and like evict people and foreclose people. Again, not the thing I really wanted to do in my life. That's what I was there to do, right? So he made a motion. I made a motion on the fly, and we both made a legal argument just on the fly. And luckily, I just had the code section memorized, the facts memorized. I knew when the date had expired and everything. And the judge initially was inclined to grant their motion, and the judge ended up saying no and denying their motion. And then we laughed, like I won that motion or whatever. And the guy's client came up to me afterwards and was like, "How do I hire you? I want to hire you as my attorney." I was like, "That's not how it works, bro. You can't hire me. That's your attorney. First of all, you've already hired him. Secondly, that would be a conflict. I couldn't represent you and represent the bank at the same time." He's like, "Well, if you ever switch sides, let me know." I was like, "Yeah, probably not going to do that." But best of luck to you, sir. I felt bad. I was like, "Sorry, man. I'm just here doing what I got, doing my job." I also had a guy try to fight me one time after a case.
That would have
fight me in the hallway, and the bailiff had to come over and restrain him. I was like, "Bro, you are barking up the wrong food, sir." Get out of my gallop in my face. I was like, bailiff, "Everything okay?" And I was like, "Is it, dude? What's going on?" The bailiff's like, "Hold me, sir," and escorted him out.
Wow.
Turns out people get emotional. People get emotional in the courtroom. That's why they have bailiffs.
Yeah, emotions could create some bad decisions. That's what that sounded like it was going.
Yeah. It was for a number of reasons. I don't like he wasn't winning that fight, and he had already lost in court. He wants to go to jail on top of it. Like, come on, man,
and
take your L, bro. Just take your L and go home. You know, it's not worth it. It's not worth the prison time. It's not worth the ass whooping. Just go away. I'm in a suit and stuff. I got like a briefcase. I'm not here to fight you, man. Come on.
Yeah, not good. Archie, what do you got?
We got time for some rapid fire questions for Nathan.
Bring it.
All right, you ready?
Yep. Get my headphones ready for these rapid fire questions. How long do I have to answer? Is it like 15 seconds?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Keep it short. Okay, actually, you know what? Let's make it short.
Yeah.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I'm a coffee guy.
Beach or the mountains?
Ooh. What season is it?
Summer.
Can I counter your question with a question?
Here goes your banter.
Can I capitalize you?
Summertime.
Summertime. Beach. Yeah, beach.
Ghee or no ghee?
Ooh. If you'd asked me a few years ago, I'd have said no ghee, but I'm a ghee guy now. I'm old, bro. Just slow it down. And these aren't what they used to be.
Courtroom or the mat?
Oh, the mat all day long. There's some people from the courtroom I wish I could have dragged onto the mat. Fucking courtroom, no.
Favorite submission?
Ooh. My best submission is my triangle. It's the one I get the most, but it's not the flashiest, it's not the coolest, but it's my best one. So I got a strong triangle, man. You get stuck in it.
Noted.
Probably a wrap.
Noted.
Probably a wrap.
Legal seminars or jiu-jitsu seminars?
Oh, dude, I've had enough legal seminars, legal networking trips to last me the rest of my life. Jiu-jitsu seminars all day long.
If you can roll with any 3 people in the world, who would they be?
Ooh, good question. Historical figures? Can we bring people back to the dead? Yeah. All right. Let's see. I like to roll with Gordon Ryan, obviously. Helio Gracie. I'm gonna have one. Abraham Lincoln. I hear he liked to wrestle. He's lanky like me. He's probably got a good triangle. And Keanu Reeves. I want to roll with Keanu Reeves because I know he's a practitioner and he seems like a super cool dude. I just like to pick his brain and philosophize with him.
Man, that was great. That was a good one.
Put Abraham Lincoln in there though. I stole that from Fight Club, but it's a legit. I would legit want to do it. Fight Club. They asked the same question: who would you fight? He's like, Abraham Lincoln. Skinny guys fight till they're hamburger. That's what he said. And he did wrestle. Abraham Lincoln was a wrestler as a young man. Yeah. So he knows some stuff. Probably can't get out of my triangle. He's like 6'4" though. Lanky ass. He probably has some stuff. He's got some leverage. I'm sure it's like Anderson Silva, probably. Long levers. Long levers.
That's awesome. That's
super
all I got.
short guys.
That's all I got. That's all I got.
Yeah. Ted Roosevelt, too. I'd add him on there. He was a wild man. He used to challenge people to boxing matches at the White House. You guys know that about Teddy
No.
when he was the president? Yeah, he like challenged foreign dignitaries to boxing matches and stuff. He was a maniac.
That's awesome. Well, Nathan, it was a pleasure. Definitely some great conversation. Thank you so much. Appreciate your
Thank you
time.
guys.
Before we jump,
Great.
how does everybody learn more about you, learn more about the channel?
Yep. So you can check out my law firm website, victoremlaw.com. You could go to our jiu-jitsu channel, which is BJJ for Breakfast. It's on YouTube. Just type in BJJ for Breakfast. It's right on there. I think we got like 700 videos or something. A lot of videos on there. The older stuff is good. It's just the quality of the videos aren't great. Newer stuff, the quality of the videos is a little better. And then on Instagram, NM Brodnax on Instagram. Check me out there. I do like a once a week, move of the week type of thing on Instagram. So if you're interested in just seeing some cool moves in like a quick little 1 minute pow format, you can see that on there. And other than that, that's it. That's where I'm at. I'm on Facebook, but that page is just mostly for my parents because they want to see pictures of their grandkids. There's nothing legal on there. There's other jiu-jitsu on there. It's just pictures of the grandkids, my parents.
Well, I love it. Well, one other quick thing. So the goal of our podcast is to be able to create conversations with BJJ practitioners that have businesses. And one of the goals is for us to be able to generate referrals for one another. If there was an ideal client for Victorem Law, what would that ideal client be? Or who would that ideal client be?
Archie. People like Archie who are starting businesses. Send them my way, man. I'll help them out. Or if they're trying to sell a business, close down a business, do a merger, do an acquisition, buy a pre-existing business. That's the type of stuff that is really my major wheelhouse. I also have a good amount of experience in like the legal cannabis industry too. A couple of my clients have started businesses, but in that space, and that's a whole weird niche because it's like still illegal federally. Although I hear they're going to deschedule it, but it's legal on the state level, so it's complicated. And most attorneys kind of don't want to touch it because they're like, I don't mind working in it. You just got to know how to navigate the field. So if you have anyone that is practicing in that or wants to work in that area, practice in that area, send them my way. Those are the main things. Real estate too. I do some real estate stuff, but businesses primarily, some cannabis stuff, real estate stuff. And if you've got any, I still represent a number of fighters. I still work with a number of fighters, helping them with various stuff, sponsors, promotion agreements and stuff like that. So if you know anyone that either manages fighters and they need a lawyer to help them with that stuff, or any fighters who are fighting and just needs an attorney to review their stuff, I did exclusively that area of the law for like 5 years. There's not a lot of attorneys that have, that level of experience who've been in it, been in the game.
Sure.
As long as I have, as they say. So yeah, anyone in that realm too, by all means. Really any entertainment stuff, because I've helped fighters with TV deals and movie deals and book deals. So I managed to kind of get my feet wet in that whole space. So any entertainment stuff, send it my way too.
Will do. Well, listen, we appreciate your time. Appreciate
you guys.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Other than that, this is a wrap for the Nathan Brodnax Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt and Attorney episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon.
See ya.
Thank you, guys.